Sorry, we don't have a graphic for you, so you got to hang on for the Big Ten coaches ranking. So Saban, Sweeney, 1 and 2. Okay, no big surprise. Don't need to really dive into that. But from the Big Ten perspective, James Franklin, the best rated coach by Bruce Feldman in the Big Ten, number 5 in college football. Ryan Day at 8, Pat Fitzgerald at 11, Kirk Ferentz at 13, Paul Chryst 21, Harbaugh at 22, Tom Allen at 25. So if you could keep all those in your brain, Steve, what's your reaction to specifically Day at 8, following up James Franklin, who's had a nice run at Penn State, but it hasn't been without its issues?
Yeah, I think he did that as a talking point, I think, to get people talking about his rankings. I mean, and there is some bias that somebody, you look at Franklin, he's probably got 10 years as a head coach now between his Vanderbilt and his Penn State, thereabouts. I don't know the exact number, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, but he at least has that edge and experience. And I guess that's what you're looking at when you put him ahead of a guy who's accomplished so much in just 2 years as a head coach. I think I don't really have an overall arching problem with this. I think that if you want to be regarded as one of the best in your profession, you need to do it over the test of time. And I think 2 years is not a huge sample size, although the success has been almost unbridled for him. Done everything but win the national championship so far. So, I can see he's got the guys who've won the most championships who are still coaching out there on top. I don't know who he has at 3 and 4, maybe Kelly or I don't know. I doubt Cookie Monster Orgeron is in the top 5, even though he's won a championship. So I don't have a big problem with it. I think you could make an argument either way for Franklin or Day. Day's won more Big Ten championships in 2 years than Franklin's won in 4 or 5, however long he's been there. And he's also 2-0 against Franklin. But, whatever. I think as each year goes on and he continues to succeed like this, he'll move up on lists like this and be at the top. As for the rest of the Big Ten brethren in there, that sounded about how I'd have it. I think we joke a lot about Ferentz, but, again, longevity. Chryst, he keeps winning the division almost every year, although didn't win it this past year. He won the division a few times prior to that. I'm interested. I could see it, and I think Harbaugh behind all those guys is where he should be because he hasn't won to the level of any of those guys yet. And Allen, I think that's a great reward for the one outstanding season that he's had. You could see it was kind of starting to build at Indiana, pushing. And last year they broke through, and had they not had the injury and the problem that they had at the end of the season with the quarterback, maybe they finish it off and have a better finish. They certainly deserved a better bowl game than what they got, although once the quarterback was out and the COVID question as well, I think the committee was probably right to not put them in the New Year's Six with the fear that they may not be able to show up for the game. But at any rate, I'm generally okay with it. I know Ohio State fans are probably up in arms about it, but as time goes on, you'll earn your spot. You'll move up the list, and I don't think there'll be any question about it.
Kevin, I think it's a garbage clickbait list. It is stupid. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. James Franklin is 38 and 23 in Big Ten play in his however many years at Penn State. Not an elite program by his own admission. They've folded in more games than anybody that I've seen in a long time. And, the thing is we're going to sit there and punish Ryan Day for short service, but we're going to give Tom Allen, we're going to boost him up in Indiana, for Christ's sake. We're going to give them, put them in the 20s or whatever off of what he's done in a year or whatever. Get out of here with this crap. This is a dumb list. James Franklin, honestly, about a third of that fan base is ready to run him because they just no. It's stupid. It is just I can't even find the words that to keep this from being dinged off of monetization because I'm going to start swearing. That is the dumbest list I've ever heard. Bruce Feldman should be ashamed of himself. James Franklin is maybe 5th in the Big Ten, not East. Horrible list. Horrible.
I completely agree about Franklin and where he ranks in the Big Ten because he's. I don't know how he ends up 5th on a national list unless you only know 5 coaches. So I mean, he loses more games than he wins as a head coach in his decision making. So that automatically is a no-go for me. Is Day number 8? Tell me who the other 7 are, or the other 5 or 4 that are ahead
Lincoln
of him.
Riley's got to be up there from Oklahoma. He's won the Big 12 every year. He's been a coach.
Sure, Jimbo.
He's the tallest little person.
Jimbo Fisher. I mean, like if
Jimbo
just
Fisher?
getting back to Franklin and Day, when Georgia fires their coach or whatever, and they could have either Day or Franklin. Is any major program going to choose James Franklin over Ryan Day at this point, or in 2 years? Maybe. Well, we'll see what happens in 2 years after, because I know there's this whole Larry Coker thing that maybe Ryan Day is Larry Coker. I don't think he is. I think he's pretty good doing what he's doing. And when you hear the players talk about him and other coaches talk about him and see what his recruiting, and gosh, he keeps making the playoffs out of, I guess, how Urban Meyer was always his fault for what Florida did for the 6 years after he was there. I guess it's Urban Meyer's fault that Ohio State keeps winning in the Big Ten. So give Urban Meyer blame, give him credit. Just whatever you do, you have to wait until he leaves to do these things. And so, where does Urban Meyer rank on that list? I'd have him number 4.
Well, I got to say, the one difficulty in doing this, and I'm in the process of doing it as well, and I'm going to release those each day of next week for each conference, is that you got to measure the facilities, you got to measure the resources, I should say, in throwing together all the components that equal the resources and the ability to win at that school versus what the coach is actually doing with that capability. So like a Pat Fitzgerald, and measuring him versus a Ryan Day is extremely difficult. But I have James Franklin at 3rd in the Big Ten myself.
If you have a mass transfer exodus, you need to do a checkup of your program. They've had a mass transfer exodus at Penn State. That is not the mark of the 5th coach in the nation. I'm seriously, we're all dumber for having read that list.
I haven't read it.
I better shut it down quickly then, because I don't need that.
And so, have you moved Fitzgerald behind Ryan Day at this point? I don't want to. You don't have to go into your list. I know you'll release it, but I would just like to say Scott Frost is no longer in the top 2 of my list. So let's go ahead and get that out there.
Yeah, I wrestled with the Pat Fitzgerald Ryan Day for exactly what I just stated. They're just dealing with different situations. They are dealing with much different situations in regard to the talent that can be drawn to those campuses.
Do you think if you put Day at Northwestern, he would do any different than Fitzgerald? And do you think if you put Fitzgerald at Ohio State, I think you put Fitzgerald at Ohio State, you're going to see some 9-3s. Just because I don't know that he's elite in terms of everything and living up to the brand. He lives up to the Northwestern brand, but I think there's more required at Ohio State.
I think it's hard for a non-Northwestern person to be successful at Northwestern, though, to put up with some of the the facilities is not an issue now that they have that beautiful lakefront facility and everything else, but we know that it's a lot more difficult in some aspects to get some kids in and deal with some of the challenges that you have as a private school and whatnot. So, I don't know if you could plug, if you plug Dabo or Saban or Day or somebody and drop them in at Northwestern, if they're going to be able to sit there and have the same translation. And let's not forget, it's not that Pat Fitzgerald is winning the West yearly. They're on a little bit of a heater right now, on for a year, off for a year, on for a year. But there are a lot of middling years there too. But with that being said, I think when we look at just longevity and just, the overall body of work, and we put in maybe some of the variables based on whatever around the university, that Fitzgerald certainly on my list, if I were to draft one, would be very much in that upper cut.
Let's remember, we already know Nick Saban cannot win in the Big Ten, so that's a moot point.
That's been proven. I think Northwestern, when they've had a quarterback, has been pretty good. We've seen that kind of borne out in the years that they didn't have a quarterback. They weren't very good. So, they can't overcome that. So some schools can, they can't. Wisconsin can overcome it because they can line up and run for 4,000 yards, and they've got a great defense. But Northwestern can't. So, yeah, I kind of like the list. I guess the more you guys talk, the more I'm forgetting about some of Franklin's shortcomings, and maybe that's what I was thinking. I was just thinking of a guy who at least had won a Big Ten, and has been right around that 10-win plateau most of his years there. But in some ways, you have to take what happened in 2020 and just kind of curl it up in a ball and throw it away, because I don't know what it proved, or, we don't know who was available, and they had guys opt out. I mean, their best player didn't play last season. So, I don't know. It's kind of hard to base anything off of what happened this past year. Now, the previous 6 years, yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
Well, to Harbaugh's defense, then we need to do the same thing with him, is ball up the 2 and 4 for 2020 and throw it away. So I'm kind of in a wait and see mode as to, okay, is this starting a trend at Michigan? Is this starting a trend at Penn State? I feel as though it's an aberration at Penn State. I believe, we'll see. I'm much more inclined to believe that this is a downward trajectory for the Maize and Blue.
I think we're going to see Michigan get right back where they were, which is 8-4, 9-3 every year. And I think, that's going to be a great accomplishment for them, coming off of 2 and 4 to get back to 8-4, 9-3. I think that's probably about the sweet spot for them. Picked 11th, 10th, 11th in the preseason, end up barely in the top 25 at the end. Yeah, that's kind of how they do it.
They felt so comfortable their quarterback position that they went out and picked up a transfer quarterback, and I think that they could roll out of bed and be a 7-5 team or something like that, and then if a couple things go okay, they could maybe pick up another win or two there and get to that 9-3 that Steve says. But it's the only light that they're seeing at the end of the tunnel is a train. That's it. I mean, they're not getting ready to emerge. They're going to emerge out of the side they came into, train first, Bugs Bunny style. I mean, they're not. No. That's all I'm just going to say is no.
I think they're very dangerously balanced to where, maybe 9-3, but also if things go poorly early, they just cave in and quit. And this is a schedule where I think the first 6 games are pretty, losable for a handful of them. So one of the good things, Mark, regarding the masks and the free mask and the registration, for Michigan fans, you can move the mask over your eyes and it becomes a blindfold.
For the trained.
That needs to be my pitch. I'll go with that.
Yes, there you go.
There it is. Yes, we do have Michigan masks as well that are multi-purpose masks, as outlined by Tony. Very nice. I like that. It's always a fascinating. Anytime you deal with lists and ranking players or coaches, especially coaches, because you just have that. It's one thing to say, this running back ran for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, and this running back ran for 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. Kind of thing, versus these coaches who are dealing with just different situations with different levels of support. And Kirk Ferentz, he took over for a legend in Hayden Fry, but the program was in awful condition at the time. He turns it around from 1-10. I'm looking at his track record a couple of days ago, and I see he goes number 8 in the country. Years like 3, 4, and 5, right out of the gate. He turns that thing around in heartbeat to a top 10 status 3 consecutive years. Then for the next 10 years, outside of like one jump where they went to the year that they almost knocked off Ohio State, Terrell Pryor had to make that miracle play in Iowa City on like 4th and a million, that they almost outright won the Big Ten, still shared the Big Ten, and went to the Orange Bowl and won it that year. But other than that, they really slumped for 10 years. And then they kind of did the same thing after 09 and 010 when they had good seasons where they dipped, but then they jumped back up to a Rose Bowl. And, they typically strike me as they're going to go 8-4, Iowa.
Yeah.
So,
well, and they one game away in 2015 of possibly being in the playoffs or being left out as an undefeated team if they win that Big Ten championship game against Michigan State. And so, yeah, that's why I like the way the Big Ten is set up, because any Big Ten West team can do what Iowa did, can do what Wisconsin has done, being one game away from like going into that Big Ten championship game undefeated and being a win away from the playoffs. And I think that's why it's just an interesting dichotomy between the Big Ten East of Ohio State and then all of these other scrappers on the Big Ten West who all they have to do is beat each other and then beat Ohio State or maybe a Penn State and you make the playoffs. And I don't know who it's easier for. Which side is it easier for? Is it easier for Penn State or is it easier for Iowa?
It's always something to see the team coming out of the West being undefeated and a 13-point dog in the Big Ten championship game.
And them going ahead by 2 touchdowns at halftime and then getting -5 yards in the second half.
A tradition unlike any other.
Yes.
One of these years. Since they split into those divisions, let's see, the last Big Ten championship game under the old rules or alignment was Ohio State, Michigan State, right? In 13. Then they changed it. Yeah, so it's been the East every year since then. Ohio State, Penn State the 1 year. Michigan State the 1 year. Okay, so it's been an Eastern Division sweep. Although if you look at the head-to-head, it's not that the bottom feeders in the East have dragged down the head-to-head record between the East and West. It's not that much disparity there, but
you have Rutgers and Maryland in the East.
Exactly.
And Ohio State losing to Purdue and Iowa.